Welcome back. As we promised, we are going to discuss the participation of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to the second Russia-African Summit, which was held in St. Petersburg. The first edition of this summit was held upon a call of Egypt when Egypt was occupying the presidency of the African Union, with the importance of the Russian role and with the distinguished historical ties that bind Russia and the Black Continent. To shed more light on the visit of the President to St. Petersburg and on his participation in the summit, on the summit itself, and also on the meetings which took place on the sidelines of the summit between the President and his Russian counterpart and a number of African leaders, we are very much delighted to have with us via phone His Excellency Ambassador Ibrahim Shwemi, former Assistant Foreign Minister for African Affairs. A very good morning to you, Ambassador Shwemi.
Good morning. Thank you.
Sir, when I was reading some of your comments on this important summit, you said an eye-catchy phrase: "This is the summit of needs and interests," meaning that it was very much important to prepare an agenda where we do have some needs, and with that we do know that much about the Russian interests in the Black Continent. And in this regard, a lot of messages and important points were tackled by President el-Sisi in his speech in front of the gathering. Would you please, I'd like to have your vision regarding those important points.
In fact, when we see the speech, the opening speech for the summit, President Putin talked about everything, and maybe this is one of the longest speech he did in any summit. So the Russia now needs to have contacts with Africa, all the African continent, and not only this, but also they have to competition between Russia and also the West. And now it is very, very important time that everything is boiling now in this new summit.
Sir, President el-Sisi was keen in his speech to speak about the very harsh circumstances which the whole world is witnessing now, and polarization, in addition to taking into consideration that the African states are enjoying sovereignty and are working to achieve sustainable development goals. In all occasions, the head of a state is seizing the opportunity to defend the African cause and to try to achieve more goals regarding our best interests as African allies. How do you see the points which were mentioned? I mean, when it comes to food crisis, to energy crisis, to achieving comprehensive economic development. How do you see those points tackled in the President's speech and in his discussions along his activities in St. Petersburg?
First, we have to look at the change between what happened in the 60s, last century, and now. It is very important. In the 60s, it was the liberation and the independence period, but now it is time for development. Development needs money, needs investment, needs all these kind of investment, economic movement. So now Russia is trying to give promises for this and that, but I think now they have difficulties because of the sanctions which the West is applying on Russia. So I don't know how much it will succeed in doing this, because also the African countries have have now developed in their thinking even that they have to gain, not only to give the raw materials only. They want to build their countries in every aspect. So it is complicated. And what Putin said in his speech is promising very high promises. So,
very high promises regarding the grains, regarding fertilizers, regarding weapons,
yes.
and also the debts of some African states. All this was tackled, but in his press conference with the president of the African Union, the Comoros president, Ghazali Assoumani, Assoumani said it's not only about those promises. We should have an end to the Russian-Ukrainian crisis because this is something for the best interest of the whole world to prevent more interest rate hikes, more prices hikes, more crisis regarding the food security, the supply chains, you name it. How do you see this statement in specific? We should have an end, we should witness an end to the Russian-Ukrainian issue.
Yes, because the Africans even, there are something like 25 countries abstained when the issue was raised in the Security Council. That means they don't want and they don't accept that things must, the situation of Russia against Ukraine. So then, this is very important because I say that the Africans, they changed their ideas about so many things now, and they want everything to be settled, and they want the real help, but not only promises and not only the weapons to make problems for themselves.
Sir, also on the sidelines of the summit, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held summit talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, and they discussed a number of issues of mutual concern and ways to boost cooperation in the field of industry, of trade, investment, and of course the President thanked his Russian counterpart for supporting Egypt to build the El Dab'a nuclear plant. Would you please elaborate?
Yes, please. Between Egypt and Russia, there is something else, because Egypt is by its location in the continent, it is a key for so many things, culture and social and economic and political, because Cairo is center for the African movements. So then, there is a very good relation between Russia and Egypt, and the plant in Dab'a is very important, and now they are working in it, and also the Egypt is asking Russia to help for the area of the east of Suez Canal. This is to investment and development and technology.
Yes, amen to that. And inshallah, the Russian industrial zone is going to host a number of companies, and this means more investments, more industrial cooperation between the two allies. Also, President Sisi, on the sidelines of the summit, met with his South African counterpart, Cyril Ramaphosa, and they discussed a number of issues of mutual concern. We do have really historic relations with all our African allies. How do you see or what we call the sideline diplomacy of the president, which all the time and with a fruitful cooperation between us and our allies all over the world, and here it's the African side? Hello?
Believing in in Africa, and he thinks that very well that Africa can do everything, and he pushed the agreement of the free trade for Africa, all Africa in Niamey, which was signed in Niamey, because he wants the African countries to depend on themselves to the very important extent, and they have not only to send their raw materials to these countries, advanced countries, but they have to get the technology, and they have to help each other, and to have to make more movement for development more than now. Yes.
Ambassador Ibrahim Shwemi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much for your input, sir, and have a very good day. Ladies and gentlemen, we were discussing the participation of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the Russia-African Summit, which was held in St. Petersburg, where the President addressed the gathering and also attends the meeting on African initiative to settle the Russian-Ukrainian crisis, a meeting with President Vladimir Putin also on the sidelines of the summit, and along with the African initiative to settle the Russian-Ukrainian crisis, the African leaders were trying to have an end soon for the conflict, which had its very negative impacts on the global economy and on the whole world. The meeting comes during the second edition of the Russia-African Summit. The leaders discussed the recent developments regarding the African initiative to end the Russian-Ukrainian war, reaffirming Africa's stake in the conflict with negatively impacting the continent, food security, finances and energy sector. The meeting concluded with an agreement to continue the African agenda by developing mechanisms to encourage positive engagement from both Russia and Ukraine in the near future. Africa is ready to help resolve the problems and appear to be outside its area of priorities, quote Vladimir Putin. President Sisi was keen also to meet with the Russian president on the sidelines of the summit, as well as a number of other African leaders to discuss a number of issues of mutual concern. Last but not least, the African-Russia summit was the second, as the first was held upon a call by Egypt when Egypt occupied the presidency of the African Union in 2019 due to the historic ties that bind the Black Continent and Russia. Right after the short break, we are going to return back with more, so stay tuned.